Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. You've heard the fairy tales, the gowns, the towers, the tiaras. But tonight, we're not talking about the Disney-fied version of royalty. No glass slippers, no spontaneous singing animals, just the slow, heavy truth of what it meant to be born a princess in the Middle Ages, a time when wealth didn't mean freedom and titles didn't mean comfort. Before we get started, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I always love seeing which time zones are drifting off together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and let's slip together into tonight's story. Tonight's journey, what life was like as a medieval princess. And right away, let's be clear. Being a princess in medieval Europe was not a life of leisure. Yes, you had servants, and yes, you might have gold thread in your gown, but behind the wealth was confinement. Behind the silk, isolation. Behind the crown, a cage. As a royal daughter, your life was not your own. It was a negotiation, a bargaining chip. Your body would be married, your womb would be measured, your every word watched. From the moment you were born, your future was already sealed with a wax ring and a father's sigh. You were property, just better fed. And that's if you were lucky. If you were unlucky, you were married off before your teeth had finished growing, sent to foreign courts, surrounded by strange languages, distant husbands, and expectations so heavy they'd crush a modern heart before breakfast. But before we get to the marriage part, before the diplomacy, before the dynasty, we start where every royal day begins, alone, awake. In a cold stone chamber built for grandeur, not for warmth. You are a medieval princess. The year is 1298, and this is your life. Let's begin. You wake up, not to sunlight, but to the sound of shutters creaking, wind howling through narrow stone gaps, and the soft hiss of your own breath rising in the cold air. You don't stretch. It's far too cold for that. Your limbs are stiff, wrapped in layers of linen and wool, bundled like a relic. Your nightgown smells faintly of lavender, but mostly of smoke and old cloth. It hasn't been washed in days, perhaps weeks. The ceiling above you is high, vaulted, and decorated with faded paint. Stars, angels, perhaps a family crest. It's hard to tell in the dim morning gloom. The fire in the hearth has long since gone out. There are no embers, only ash. A stone room, vast and echoing, is a beautiful thing to draw, but a terrible thing to wake up in. It holds no heat, only history and silence. You lie on a raised bed, high enough to need a step stool. It's draped in velvet curtains, not for luxury, but for survival. The heavy fabric tries to hold in what little warmth your body has generated overnight. But cold slips in anyway, like a secret. Always. The mattress is straw, stuffed thick and dense, lumpy. It crackles when you move. Beneath the sheets, linen, then wool, then more linen, are warming pans long since cooled. You can still feel where they once sat, a ghost of warmth. But that warmth has abandoned you now. You're not alone in the room. You never are. Near the hearth, two maids sleep curled on mats, wrapped in coarse cloaks, one of them snoring lightly. A fire would have been started for you by now, but the coals were damp last night, and they couldn't get it to catch. No one dared to wake you to admit it. Above you, a narrow slit of a window lets in early winter light. No glass, just an oiled parchment stretched across wooden crossbars. It lets in the day, but not the warmth, and it rattles whenever the wind rises. It's always rattling. You are a princess, but you are also a prisoner. This chamber, high in your family's castle, is your whole world. You're not permitted to walk freely. You're watched by tutors, by ladies-in-waiting, by guards. Everything you see has been decided for you. Your books are chosen, your letters screened, your visitors approved in advance, and you are cold, deeply, relentlessly cold. The kind of cold that gets into your jaw, your spine, your fingertips. No matter how many layers they pile on you, no matter how close you press to the dogs that sleep at the foot of your bed, the chill remains. It is the kind of cold that settles in your chest and refuses to leave. When your maid rises, she doesn't speak. She walks to your bed silently and bows her head. Words are not required yet. She begins to draw back the curtains of your bed slowly, cautiously, not for your sake, but because in this castle, everyone is afraid of making the wrong sound at the wrong time. One creak of the wrong floorboard near your father's chamber, and someone might lose a job or a tooth. Outside, the castle stirs. You can hear servants' feet on the stairs, soft, hurried. The bell in the courtyard tolls for the chapel. The smell of damp stone, soot, and boiled oats drifts up from the lower kitchens. Somewhere far off, you hear the clatter of armor. The guards are changing shifts. It's the sound of discipline, of routine, of power being performed, even when no one is watching. You sit up slowly. The bed creaks. Your back aches. You're 13 years old, but your spine already feels 25. You've been taught since you were 6 how to sit properly, how to walk properly, how to tilt your head at just the right angle of obedience and silent nobility. You've been told that your posture is political, your silence, a virtue. Before your feet touch the floor, a second maid kneels to place a sheepskin rug beneath them. The stone is too cold for bare skin. You still flinch when you step down, not because of the chill, but because you expect to flinch. The memory of cold hurts more than the cold itself. Your nightcap is removed. Your hair is long, unwashed, tangled from sleep and the weight of the braids that were undone only hours before. It will take the maids an hour to brush it into shape. You're not allowed to cut it. Your hair is a symbol of health, of virtue, of fertility, not beauty. That's a dangerous word here. The room smells of lavender oil, dried rushes, and wool soaked in last week's fire. Somewhere in the corner, the dried herbs placed in a small bowl of water have soured. Your governess will complain about that later. The door opens. Not loudly, never loudly. No one in a castle ever enters loudly unless something terrible has happened. It's one of the things you've learned to listen for. It's your nursemaid. She bows, eyes down, and announces the weather. It's ceremonial, even though you've already felt the cold in your bones. But it must be said aloud, every morning. The frost held overnight, my lady. The roads are not safe for travel. You nod. You were never going to travel anyway. You haven't left the walls of this castle in 3 months. You are not allowed to ride without an escort. You are not allowed to walk the outer fields. You are not allowed to bathe without a witness. The winter is long. The rules are longer. You are, by all outward appearances, a child of privilege. You wear embroidery. You eat from silver. You sleep in a bed so tall you need steps to climb it. And yet, you are watched, measured, and slowly molded into something ornamental, something fragile, something that can be given away. You don't know who you'll marry yet, but you know it's coming. The way the guards bow lower around you now, the way your tutors speak more formally. You are being prepared for something, or someone. And whoever he is, he will not be cold. He will have fires in every room, blankets of fur, power to command the wind itself to stay outside. But for now, the wind is still here. It hisses through the cracks of your childhood. You are a princess, and the day has begun. A princess's breakfast, cold porridge, cold water, cold smiles. The chamber pot is still full. You try not to look at it, but it's there. Just beyond the edge of your bed curtains, its heavy ceramic body tucked neatly behind a folding screen, embroidered with stitched roses and faded lions. Your maid empties it in silence. The smell is not overwhelming, but it is ever present. It's part of the room, just like the tapestries and the chill and the single candle still guttering from last night. This is morning hygiene in the medieval castle. Quiet, compromised, anything but private. There is no sink, no wash basin built into the stone, no steaming bath, unless you are gravely ill or being prepared for a feast. Instead, you sit on the edge of your bed, shoulders draped with a wool shawl, as a maid kneels in front of you with a small copper basin filled with icy water fetched from the courtyard well. She dips a cloth in the bowl and wrings it out carefully. The water runs over her fingers, splashing onto the rushes at her knees. You see her shiver. You don't comment. She raises the cloth and begins to wipe your face. It's not painful, just jarring. The water is cold enough to sting, and it smells faintly of tin and something mossy. The cloth moves across your brow, your cheeks, under your chin. Not for cleanliness, not really, but for ritual, for order, for the appearance of freshness. Your hands are next, then your neck. The maid pauses at your ears, hesitant, and then wipes them gently. You flinch, not from touch, but from memory. The last time she forgot your ears, your governess scolded her for 10 minutes in front of you. There is no soap. Soap is expensive, rare, and reserved for special occasions. Olive oil soap exists, of course, imported from the warmer lands, but it's tucked away in a locked cabinet and used only for perfumed baths. You are not bathing today. Not unless the queen herself requests your presence. Your teeth are not brushed. No one in your world brushes their teeth in the way you think of it. Instead, your maid offers you a thin birch twig, the end of it softened and frayed. You chew it. Slowly. The fibers scrape along your molars, catching crumbs from yesterday's supper. It does little, if anything. But it's tradition. You spit into a cloth. Your breath still smells of salted meat and stale wine. You try not to notice. A small mirror is presented. Polished brass, not glass. Your face stares back at you, warped and yellowed. Your lips are chapped. Your eyes look tired. You are 13, and you already look older than the painted icons of saints lining the chapel wall. Your hair is next. It takes 2 women to brush it. One to hold the mass steady, the other to tug at the knots with a boar bristle brush that catches on every braid-stretched strand. Your scalp is sore before they begin. Afterward, it throbs. You do not cut your hair. That would be a scandal. A princess's hair is a symbol of purity and health, a veil of virtue, a future dowry in a way, as much as your titles and your hips. It is thick, long, a color praised in poems written by monks who've never seen it outside the veil of Mass. Once brushed, it is braided loosely, no pins or veils yet. Those will come later, depending on who visits today. Today you are to remain in your chamber until after morning prayers. So the hair is kept soft, manageable, controlled. Your skin is dry from the winter air. The maid dabs a salve at the corners of your mouth, a mixture of rendered goose fat and crushed rose petals. It smells like a sick garden. You say nothing. The alternative is cracked lips that bleed during recitation. That too has happened before. Breakfast is brought in on a wooden tray, carried by a young page boy with pink cheeks and eyes too wide for court life. He kneels without looking at you. He isn't allowed to. The tray is placed on a small table beside your bed. There is no ceremony, no silver, just 2 ceramic bowls, a wooden spoon, and a pewter cup. One bowl holds pottage. It's thin today, more broth than substance, probably barley, maybe oats. There are a few soft lumps floating in the pale gray mix, pieces of root vegetable, perhaps turnip. There's no salt. Salt is rationed, locked in the pantry under key. It will be added at supper if the steward permits. You sip. It's warm, at least, but bland. It clings to your teeth. It tastes faintly of soot and whatever was boiled in this pot last night. The second bowl contains bread, hard, stale, but toasted slightly on one side to soften the edge. It's made of coarse rye and barley, not the soft white bread reserved for the king's table. You chew slowly. You don't want to, but it's necessary. You'll be in lessons soon. Your stomach must be filled, even if your spirit is not. There's no butter, no jam, just bread, and the scraping of your own teeth. Your drink is watered wine, thin, sour, more vinegar than vintage. You're not allowed ale. That's for the servants. You're not allowed milk. That's for infants. You sip the wine and try not to cough. Sometimes there's fruit, a poached pear, a slice of preserved plum. Not today. Today, it's just what's necessary. You eat alone, but not unwatched. The nursemaid lingers in the corner, darning a sleeve. Another maid stands near the hearth, poking the ash with a stick. They're pretending not to see you. You pretend not to notice. Everything here is ritual, choreographed silence. Each act, wiping your mouth, handing back the spoon, bowing your head in thanks, is learned, practiced, watched, and it's not over. Once you've finished your bread, a final rinse is brought, another bowl of cold water. You dip your fingers in, then dab them on a cloth, not to wash, but to symbolize cleansing, an echo of Roman traditions, filtered through centuries of frost and Catholicism. There's no scent of coffee, no sugar, no spice. That's not breakfast in your world. In your world, breakfast is survival, duty, a rehearsal for the real performances of the day. Your prayers, your posture, your obedience. You are fed, you are dressed, you are clean in the medieval sense of the word. And now you are ready. The governess will arrive soon. She'll quiz you on Latin declensions. You'll sit on a hard bench and repeat words written by monks who've never kissed a girl or held a sword. You'll learn French grammar for a marriage you haven't yet been told about. You'll recite scripture for a priest who smells of onions and judgment. And through it all, your stomach will churn quietly beneath your corset. You are a princess, and this was your breakfast. Clothing and shelter, draped in beauty, drenched in discomfort. Getting dressed as a princess, it begins with the underthings. Not lace, not silk, and certainly not lingerie. The first layer you wear is linen, coarse, itchy linen. Your maid calls it a smock, though to your skin it feels more like a questionably washed dishcloth trying to apologize by clinging to your ribs. You raise your arms. The linen slips over your head. It smells faintly of lye and smoke. It was boiled 3 days ago in the scullery with wood ash and stream water. It's the closest thing to clean that exists in this castle. The fabric sticks under your arms. Winter has dried your skin, but the sweat still comes, especially in these upper chambers. The hearth rarely lights properly, but the weight of your clothes will make you overheat long before you reach the chapel. Next comes the hose, woolen, thick, scratchy, pulled up awkwardly past your knees and fastened with garters made of ribbon or cord. They pinch, but if they're too loose, they'll slide down, and nothing is more humiliating than your stockings slumping like defeated soldiers during morning procession. You do not wear trousers. That's for men. You wear long skirts, layers upon layers of fabric designed not for movement or comfort, but for modesty, display, and control. Your body is not yours. It's a vessel, a symbol, a political entity, and every layer is there to remind you of that. The kirtle is next, a long underdress, laced tightly at the sides. The sleeves are narrow, and your maid must push and twist your arms into them like you're being packed for shipping. The fit is intentional. The tightness is proof that you are disciplined, that you are slender, that you are marriable. You can't breathe deeply anymore. That's fine. You're not expected to run or dance or even laugh without permission. Over the kirtle comes the surcoat. This one is heavier, dyed burgundy, embroidered at the cuffs with the crest of your house. Gold thread, now dulled from wear. The neckline is square and modest, and your shoulders feel the sudden weight of nobility, quite literally. This fabric is lined with squirrel fur, not for luxury, but for warmth. You'll still be cold. Your girdle is braided silk and fastens at your waist. It doesn't hold anything up. It's decorative, symbolic. It suggests that your womb is under control, that your virtue is tethered, leashed, and presented without a single wrinkle. You catch your reflection in a polished brass plate on the table. You don't look beautiful. You look like a tower disguised as a girl. Stiff, unmoving, designed to be seen, not felt. Now the veil. You kneel so your maid can fasten it. Your hair, braided earlier, is pinned tight to your skull. Over it goes a linen coif, a cap to hold everything in place, then a fillet, a band across your forehead. Then finally, a veil pinned into the fillet and cascading over your back. You cannot feel your scalp anymore. That's probably a blessing. In warmer months, you might wear a wimple, fabric covering your neck and chin, leaving only your face exposed like a portrait of obedience. But today, it's just the veil, enough to signal your rank, enough to signal that you are a maiden, not yet touched, not yet claimed. By now, your clothes weigh nearly 20 pounds. Your movement is deliberate, slow. It must be. If you trip, if you tear the hem, if you reveal too much ankle, it's not just a stumble. It's a scandal, a weakness, a flaw in the family fabric. Your shoes are not designed for walking. They are pointed, soft, made of leather and cloth. The soles are thin. You feel every stone, every lump in the rushes. They slide easily. There is no tread. You are not meant to run, only glide. And once you are fully dressed, fully bound, you may walk, but only within the allowed spaces, and only if the steward permits. Your room is grand, yes. By peasant standards, it's a palace in itself, but for you, it is a cage of drafty luxury. Let's talk about your chamber. It is the second largest in the castle's east wing. The windows are tall, narrow, unglazed. They are covered with oiled parchment or, in rare cases, sheets of horn scraped thin enough to let in light, but not air. You cannot open them. You wouldn't dare. Cold seeps in constantly. The walls are stone, beautiful from afar, miserable up close. They sweat in the summer, freeze in the winter. They hold moisture like secrets. Mold grows behind the tapestries. You've seen it, you've smelled it. But to remove them would be scandalous. They display your lineage, even the damp parts. The tapestries themselves are heavy, woven with hunting scenes, biblical figures, allegories too subtle for your tutors to explain. They mute the echoes. That's the goal. Too much sound in a noblewoman's chamber is considered inappropriate, as if joy has volume, and your rank must dampen it. The floor is stone as well, covered with rushes, not carpets. Carpets are from the east and far too valuable to walk on. Your rushes are layered, herbs, straw, and whatever the servants could sweep up from the yard. They hide dirt, soak up spills, and rot in corners. They also smell, especially in spring. The furniture is minimal, a large bed, carved canopied with thick posts that groan in the wind, a chest at its foot, full of linens, old letters, and a hidden flask of rose oil. A writing desk, locked. You don't have the key. A single chair, straight-backed, not for comfort, for posture. And a prie-dieu, a small kneeling bench, polished by years of silent prayer. You kneel there every night. You confess, even when you haven't sinned. You pray, even when you don't understand the words. There is no fireplace in your room, only a brazier. A metal bowl of coals, barely warm, more smoke than heat. The servants empty it twice a day. Ash falls on the rushes. You breathe it in without complaint. Your bathing chamber is down the hall. You use it once a month, maybe twice if the bishop isn't visiting. The rest of the time it's washing from basins, cloths soaked in cold water, rinsed, reused. Hair is washed rarely, every few weeks at most. Soap burns the scalp. You've cried before. No one mentioned it. There is no privacy, not ever. Maids come and go, pages knock and enter. You have no lock, and even if you did, using it would raise questions. What are you hiding? Who are you with? Why do you need to be alone? Because princesses are not alone. They are presented, displayed, dressed and undressed like dolls with lineage. You wear beauty like armor, and comfort is the first thing it kills. You are a medieval princess, and this is what you wear. This is what you live in. This is what they call luxury. Work fit for a princess. Survival in silk gloves. You might imagine that as a medieval princess, your days are full of poetry and embroidery, of music drifting through arched halls and sunlight caught in stained glass. And yes, those things exist, but not as pleasure, not as leisure. They are work. In your world, even elegance is labor. You are awake before the sun fully clears the tower windows. You've already been cleaned, dressed, fed. You've been corrected twice, once for slouching, once for not responding quickly enough to your governess's Latin question. And now, your real day begins. Your first task is posture training. Yes, posture. You stand beside your maid with a book balanced on your head, arms straight, eyes forward. It sounds easy. It is not. The book is heavy, the floor is uneven, and your gown pulls your shoulders down like a guilt you didn't earn. You are corrected often. Head up. Elbows in. Don't lock your knees. Ladies faint that way. You've fainted once before, in summer. The layers of your dress trapped heat like a furnace. You dropped mid-lesson during a reading of Boethius. Your teacher blamed your weak constitution, but the maid who caught you said nothing. Just slipped a sugar cube into your palm once you woke. It was the best thing you tasted all week. After posture comes penance, or, as your tutors call it, education. You sit at a low desk, ankles crossed, hands folded, back straight. A candle flickers beside you. The parchment smells like sheep. The ink is gritty, the quill split. You're copying scripture, not for understanding, not for insight, for muscle memory. So your hand learns control. So your letters reflect your obedience. Your fingers cramp. You don't complain. You've also begun arithmetic, not to manage money. That's not your role, but to prove you are clever enough to breed with. The phrase came from your uncle. He laughed when he said it. No one else did. You study French and Latin, French for diplomacy, Latin for the church. You recite both in whispers, your mouth shaping words meant for prayers and treaties. You are told often, your tongue must be sharp, but only when summoned. If you speak out of turn, you are corrected. If you speak too boldly, you are silenced. If you speak wisely, and someone important hears, you are praised, but also watched. By mid-morning, your tutor leaves, and your governess takes over. Now comes the part of your education known as feminine accomplishments. The phrase makes it sound light, delicate, but this is where the real labor begins. You sew for hours, not because you enjoy it, though sometimes you do, but because a princess must know how to stitch a veil, mend a hem, and embroider a birthcloth. Not because she will ever need to, but because it proves discipline. Control, stillness. Your fingers bleed. You prick yourself often. You hide the blood with a scrap of cloth. You're not supposed to stain the linen. Blood-stained embroidery speaks of impatience, of distraction, of weakness. Some days you weave instead, a band for a dress, a trim for altar cloths. You work the loom with calloused hands, not because you are poor, but because this is your duty. This is how you prove your worth, not in coins or deeds, but in thread count. After sewing comes music. You are not expected to master an instrument, only to appear as if you could. You press your fingers to the psaltery. You pluck awkward strings and pretend it pleases you. You recite songs from memory, ballads of saints, dirges of queens who died giving birth. You sing them softly, eyes down. The lyrics are always the same: obedience, sacrifice, silence, virtue. You learn dance, but not the kind that makes you sweat or smile. You glide, you bow. You practice walking in slow circles while an older woman watches you move with a rod in her hand. Too quick, she says, too loose. Smile, but not like that. You are not a tavern maid. You are a princess, and you must move like one, as though the air parts for you, but your own muscles do not. By midday, you're exhausted, but you are not permitted to rest. Instead, you go to the solar, the warmest room in the castle, and sit with the other women of your family. Ladies, older cousins, perhaps your mother. They are working too. Your mother is stitching something for a church altar. Your cousin is repairing lace. You're expected to pick up your embroidery again. You do, even though your hands ache. Sometimes there is conversation, but it is never unguarded. You speak of saints, of recent births, of letters received from foreign lands. You do not speak of dreams, or fears, or hunger. That would be unseemly. The survival work of a princess is not about farming or carrying water. It is not about spinning wool in the mud or lifting buckets from a freezing well. No. Your labor is subtler. It is survival by obedience, by performance, by being flawless for so long. You forget where the performance ends and the person began. Sometimes you visit the still room, a chamber where herbs are dried, oils infused, balms stirred. It smells of rosemary and vinegar. You grind lavender into powder with a mortar and pestle. You label bottles in Latin. You fold strips of cloth soaked in wine and herbs for headaches you are not supposed to have. Once you made a healing salve for your maid's cracked hands. She thanked you. You said nothing. You weren't supposed to notice her pain. You also mend books, rebind pages, sharpen quills. None of this is for show. It is for reputation. A princess must be industrious, but not sweaty. Clever, but not bold. Educated, but not rebellious. Skilled, but never skilled enough to appear threatening to the men who will one day rule beside or over you. Before supper, you return to your chamber. You will dress again. Fix your veil. Apply a touch of rose oil behind each ear. You will descend to the dining hall where your father sits like a carved statue and your brothers brag over venison. You will eat little. You will speak less. You will listen. Nod. Smile. And tomorrow, you will do it all again. Because you are a medieval princess, and your labor is not in the field. It is in your silence, your stillness, your perfection, maintained all day long in plain sight. Beliefs, religion, and superstitions, holy, haunted, and helpless, the spiritual cage of a princess. The bell tolls again. It's the third time today, maybe the fourth. They all blend together. The endless ringing of iron against air, signaling that it's time to rise, to kneel, to cross yourself, to submit. As a medieval princess, you are never far from God, or from people who speak on His behalf. You live under a roof built as much for piety as protection. The chapel is only 2 corridors away from your chamber. You are expected to attend services daily. Matins, lauds, vespers, mass on feast days, special prayers during Lent, rosaries in winter, confession when the sky looks angry. You do not question it. You do not complain. You genuflect. You bow. You repeat the Latin that you've memorized, though you barely understand half of it. God is everywhere, but He doesn't always feel kind. In your world, religion is not just belief, it is law. It governs when you eat, when you speak, when you bathe, when you marry, when you kneel, when you die. You are told your soul is fragile, like a glass cup held between 2 great hands, one of God, one of the devil. You can tip in either direction at any time. One wrong word, one wicked thought, one uncovered ankle at the wrong moment, and down you go. Straight into hellfire. Your confessor tells you this weekly. He is old, narrow-eyed, and smells like cabbage and old ink. He calls your soul a garden, your thoughts soil. He asks if you have let any weeds in. You don't understand the metaphor, but you cry anyway. You're supposed to. Tears are proof of contrition. You confess everything, even things you haven't done just to be safe. You confess pride, envy, impure thoughts, though you're not entirely sure what counts. You confess that you dreamed of dancing, that you imagined having your own horse, that once you looked a knight in the eye. Your penance is prayers, always more prayers. Sometimes He asks if you fast enough. Sometimes, if you dream too much. Once He asked if you had touched yourself inappropriately. You said no. You didn't understand the question until much later. You kneel in the chapel, the stone floor bruising your knees. You whisper the Ave Maria again and again, your voice a part of the walls. The statues watch you. cold saints in painted wood. Their eyes follow you when you rise, when you falter, when you forget a line. Your governess tells you that good girls have no questions, just faith. But you do have questions. Where does God go at night? Why are there no saints who look like you? Why does he love silence so much? And what about the other things? The things no one says in Latin? Because alongside the church, in the shadow of its towering presence, there are older beliefs, ones whispered by servants, ones your nursemaid mutters under her breath when the fire smokes the wrong way, or a raven lands on the sill. You know what these are called? Superstitions. You're not supposed to believe them, but you do. A little. You've seen your maid spit 3 times into the hearth when someone speaks of death. You've seen your mother tie a red thread around your baby cousin's wrist to ward off the evil eye. You've heard the kitchen girls knock on wood, cross their fingers, whisper charms against spoiled milk, bad dreams, and boys with strange smiles. You've done it too. Once you found a toad near your window. The nurse said it was a sign that someone was casting envy your way. She buried it in the orchard, upside down, with a sprig of sage in its mouth. She told you not to speak of it. You haven't. Once you had a fever, a terrible one. You saw things in the fire, faces, shapes, a woman with a red veil who sang in a language you've never heard. The priest came with holy water. The nurse came with garlic and ash. You recovered. No one said which one worked. God is in the church. But protection, that lives in the walls. The herbs, the rules no one writes down. You were taught about saints. You have a favorite, Saint Margaret. She was swallowed by a dragon and survived. The priest says it's a metaphor for faith. The nurse says it's a metaphor for childbirth. You think it's just a metaphor for being a girl. You pray to her often. You light candles. You cross yourself. You keep rosemary under your pillow to keep away bad dreams. You are told angels watch you. You are also told that demons wait behind the doors, behind the mirrors, behind the choices you don't yet know you'll have to make. You've been warned about witches, not the real ones, the women with herbs and sharp tongues, but the ones they put on trial, the ones they burn. You've never seen a trial, but you've heard about one. A girl in the village. Too many herbs. Too many chickens that died near her door. You don't ask what happened, but her house is still empty, and no one plants there anymore. You keep a piece of bread under your pillow on feast days. No one told you why. You just do. You are told that dreams can be messages, but only from saints. You are told that women are more likely to sin. Because Eve. You are told to be quiet. Because Mary was quiet. And she was perfect. And you must be like her. Even if you don't understand her. Faith is woven into your gowns, into your meals, into your thoughts. It's the thing behind your eyes when you look at the stars and feel too small to speak. You don't know where God lives, but you know He is always watching. And that's the part that keeps you still. Because one mistake, and you're not just punished, you are judged. In this world, a sin committed by a princess echoes louder than thunder. Even if no one sees it, heaven does. So they say. You try not to think about that too much when you wake in the night, when the candle flickers, when the shadows dance on the ceiling in strange, twisting ways. You are a princess, but more than that, you are a believer. And in this world, belief is not gentle. It is strict. It is sharp. It is stitched into your skin like thread pulled too tight. Feasting with grace, starving with elegance. The royal table. You don't eat when you're hungry. You eat when the bell rings. Supper in the castle is not about nourishment. It's about performance. Status. Ceremony. Every bite you take is watched. Every crumb you leave behind is noticed. Even your hunger, or your lack of it, can be interpreted. You are a princess. You eat like a poem. You chew like a negotiation. The great hall is cold, always cold. Even in summer, even with the torches and the candelabras and the fire pit roaring with logs thicker than your arm. The stone walls hold a chill that no fire can conquer. You walk in with slow, trained steps, skirts brushing the rushes, eyes slightly lowered. The hall quiets, slightly, enough to remind everyone that you are not one of them. A long table stretches beneath the stained glass windows. Your father sits at the center, his face carved from stone, his goblet never empty, his dogs curled beneath his feet, fed better than most villagers. You sit to his left. That alone says everything. To his right, your brothers, 2 of them. Loud, red-faced, sharp-eyed boys who spill wine and laugh too hard and still get away with it. You are not allowed to laugh like that. If you laugh at all, it must be soft, brief, and followed by silence, like a mistake that fixes itself. You do not speak first. You do not reach first. You wait, always. The food arrives in waves, trays carried by servants in lines, eyes lowered. The first course is simple. Bread, not soft, not warm. Coarse rye, often stale, torn with fingers because knives are only for men. You dip it in a bowl of broth. It's thin, salted water flavored with bones. Maybe a hint of onion, maybe not. You can't be sure. Next comes a meat pie. Pork, perhaps. You think it's pork. It could be pigeon. It could be rabbit. The crust is hard, and the filling is dense, pressed tight with fat and spice. It smells good, but you take small bites, careful ones. You chew until it's safe to swallow. Not because you fear choking, but because a princess must never seen with her mouth full. Your brothers eat with enthusiasm, grease on their hands, meat on their lips. No one stops them. No one corrects their posture. When they belch, they grin. When you cough, just once discreetly, your governess gives you a look that could cut glass. You sip wine. Watered, of course. You are allowed only a small portion. Your cup is pewter, not silver. That's for your father. Yours is functional, plain, with a small chip near the base. You know it well. You've stared at it more times than you can count, trying to look busy when conversation turns to politics. Vegetables arrive, boiled into submission. Cabbage, turnips, maybe leeks. The smell is thick, heavy. It clings to your sleeves. You pick at it. You eat enough to appear grateful, but not enough to appear greedy. Greed in a girl is dangerous. After the main courses, there is sometimes a sweet, a custard, a tart of plums or dried figs, a few sugared almonds if the kitchen steward is feeling generous. You are allowed to enjoy these, quietly. And while you eat, or pretend to, the conversation swirls around you like smoke. Politics, taxes, marriages, war, names of men you don't know, places you'll never see, treaties you'll one day be a part of, whether you like it or not. You are not expected to contribute, but you are expected to listen. Because one day, someone will ask you about something you were supposed to hear, and if you don't remember it, it will be your fault. One day, you'll be married into a house that expects loyalty, wisdom, silence, and the ability to make small talk about things that aren't meant for you. So you listen, even when the wine burns, even when the candle wax drips too close, even when your stomach turns, because food, for a princess, is not nourishment. It is a performance, and one you must repeat nightly. Entertainment follows, but not the joyful, spontaneous kind. There is no dancing unless it is arranged, no singing unless it is approved, no jokes unless your father laughs first. Sometimes a minstrel is invited, a man with a harp and 100 verses. His songs are long, historical, meant to flatter the family name. He sings of your ancestors' victories, of your father's mercy, of the land your house has claimed. You sit with your hands in your lap and pretend to enjoy it. Even when the hall smells of sweat and grease and someone's boots are wet sweat from the latrine. Other nights there are games, board games of strategy, chess, tafel, 9 men's Morris. You are expected to play gracefully, to lose gently, to never beat your brother too obviously. Once you won 3 games in a row. The governess said it made your cousin look small. You apologized. There are jesters sometimes, but they don't make you laugh. Their humor is rough, meant for the men. You smile politely. You pretend not to understand the crude parts. You pretend not to see the girl who catches your father's eye from the corner of the hall. You are not allowed to leave early. You stay until the lord of the hall rises, until the priest nods, until the fire dies low and the servants begin to clean up the bones and crumbs. You rise with aching feet and the taste of watered wine lingering behind your teeth. If it is a feast day, a holy celebration, the meal is longer, richer, boar with apples, swans with feathers reattached for presentation, pies that bleed red currants when cut. It looks like glory. It tastes like salt and stringy meat. And still, it is work. Every feast, every plate, every cup you hold is a symbol. You are being watched, judged, weighed, like an animal at auction, except the pen is made of lace. You don't remember the last time you ate alone, or quickly, or simply, or until you were full. You don't remember the last time your mouth opened for a bite instead of a smile. But this is the cost of elegance. This is the dining life of a medieval princess, hungry, graceful, and never allowed to lick your fingers. Plagues, leeches, and prayers. A princess's quiet panic. It begins with a cough, a sound in the dark. Someone, a maid, a cousin, a page boy, coughs behind a door. Just once. You hear it. Everyone hears it. No one says anything. But suddenly, everyone moves more carefully. Because in your world, a cough is not just a cough. It might be the plague. It might be something worse. It might be a bad omen. And when you're a medieval princess, omens are just as terrifying as germs. You are wrapped in velvet and veils, yes. You eat from silver spoons. You wear jewels worth more than villages. But none of that protects you from sickness. Your chamber may have thick curtains, high windows, and braziers full of coals. But disease slips through everything. Like smoke, like breath, like death in disguise. You have seen it happen. You were 9 when your cousin died. She had a fever one day, then spots the next. She stopped speaking within 3 days. Her eyes rolled back. Her hands twitched. Her mouth foamed. They burned the mattress she died on and locked the room for a month. You never got to say goodbye. The priest said it was God's will. The physician said it was bad air. The nurse said it was the rats. You said nothing. You just started checking your skin each morning, tracing your veins, and wondering how much time you had left. Illness, for a princess, is not just suffering. It's scandal. It's strategy. It's political. Because your body isn't just yours. It's the hope of a dynasty. You can't afford to be weak. You can't afford to die. So they watch you closely. At the first sign of illness, a shiver, a flush, a sleepless night, you are poked, prodded, prayed over. The physician is called. He is old. His fingers smell like vinegar and old parchment. He carries a leather bag of tools, knives, leeches, powders that look like crushed bones and smell like mold. He checks your pulse by touching your wrist with 2 fingers and looking at the ceiling, as though your soul is hiding in the rafters. Sometimes he tastes your urine. Yes, tastes it. Just a drop on the tip of his tongue. Then he announces whether you are full of heat, cold, wet, or dry. You never know what that means, but he always seems very sure of himself. If he says you have an imbalance and you're bled, not dramatically, not always with leeches, sometimes just a small cut on the arm, a bowl is placed beneath it. You watch your strength spill into it. You feel dizzy afterward, but that's expected. Better out than in, they say. They're talking about your blood. Other times they give you purgatives, herbs to make you vomit, or evacuate everything from both ends. The idea is simple. Purge the illness, drain the sin, cleanse the humors. You don't feel cleansed. You feel hollow. The herbs they give you are bitter. Mugwort, wormwood, pennyroyal. Sometimes they mix them with wine or honey. It doesn't help. You choke them down anyway. You always do. Once you were made to sleep beside a dead hedgehog. Another time they hung garlic around your neck for a week. And when the real fear comes, when the word plague is whispered, the rules change. No visitors, no servants except the nurse. Your food is left at the door. Your letters are burned without reading. You become a ghost long before you die. And if you're lucky, if you survive, they treat you like a miracle. Not because they're relieved, but because they're terrified of you. Because survivors are sometimes contagious, sometimes cursed, sometimes touched by something that doesn't let go. You pray constantly, Not just to be well, but to be seen as well. Because if they think you're sick, they will hide you. Or worse, they'll start making plans to replace you. You have seen it happen. Once a noble girl from a nearby house was engaged to your cousin. Then she took ill. She recovered, mostly. But she was not the same. Her betrothal was broken. They said she was moonstruck. You saw her once, years later, during a festival. Her hair had been cut short. Her sleeves were tied shut. She smiled too widely and talked to invisible birds. You told no one you'd seen her. You just walked away. There are midwives in the castle, old women with sharp eyes and soft hands. They know more than the physicians, but they speak less. They use herbs, charms, quiet. They touch your forehead and say nothing. But sometimes you see them look worried. They use things the priests hate: juniper smoke, dried foxglove, ground snake fang. They say a princess must be protected not just from death, but from the shadow of death. They make amulets for you. One hangs from your bedpost, a tooth, a sprig of rosemary, a circle of knotted red thread. You pretend it's decoration. You know it's protection. But nothing protects you from fear. Because in the end, illness is not just about pain. It's about what it takes from you before it kills you. It takes your hair, your pride, your strength. It makes you stink. It makes you weak. It makes people whisper. It makes you invisible. And worse than that, it makes you forgettable. Because a princess is only useful if she is healthy, marriageable, pregnant. Sickness interrupts all of that. So you live carefully. You eat the herbs. You wear the charms. You never sit near a coughing guest. You never drink from someone else's cup. And when the coughing starts down the hall again, you hold your breath. You whisper a prayer. And you wonder if this is the time your luck runs out. Because one thing is certain. In the medieval world, a princess can die just like anyone else. And no crown, no chapel, no title can bargain with the plague once it's in the walls. Cradles, corsets, and control. A princess in the family machine. You were born with a purpose. Not to live freely. Not to chase dreams or discover who you are. But to become someone else's symbol. A daughter. A bride. A mother. A connection. From your first breath, you were an asset. Your name was inked into ledgers. Your future whispered about in corridors. Men toasted your birth not because they were happy, but because you might one day secure a treaty, or land, or peace. You are a princess. But before anything else, you are a woman. And in the medieval world, that means you belong to someone. Always. Your father owns your name. Your husband will own your body. And God, they say, owns your soul. You are part of a family, a royal one. And every royal family is a machine. It has gears, pulleys, hidden blades. You were born to keep it running, smoothly, quietly. Your mother is the queen. You rarely see her alone. She is always surrounded by ladies in waiting, by her priest, by the ceaseless rustling of robes and the weight of responsibility. Her face is unreadable, perfect. Her smiles are thin, like the edge of a knife you only notice once it draws blood. She had 12 children. Only 5 lived. No one speaks of the others. She wakes at dawn, prays for an hour, oversees the linen stores, reviews the household accounts, approves menus, corrects servants, accepts guests, keeps her voice calm even when her hands tremble with fatigue. Once, when you were small, she held you after a nightmare. She didn't say much, but she brushed your hair back and sang something in a language you didn't understand. That's the only time you remember her being soft. She had no choice. Queens are not allowed softness. Neither are princesses. Your sisters, if you have any, are your mirrors. They look like you, sit like you, speak like you. You've all been taught the same script, and still you are competitors, because there are only so many princes, only so many kingdoms, only so many alliances to be made. And your brothers? They are wild with freedom. They fence, ride, hunt. They're praised for bruises, given tutors who joke with them, allowed to stumble, to argue, to fail. If you raise your voice, it's unbecoming. If they raise theirs, it's leadership. You eat the same bread, sleep under the same roof, but your lives do not belong to the same world. They are heirs. You are a dowry. Your value is calculated. Not just your titles or your wealth, but your virtue. Which means, how obedient are you? How quiet? How pious? How small can you make yourself in the presence of powerful men? They watch you at feasts, at prayers, at family councils where you are not allowed to speak, but are expected to remember everything. When you're of age, and the age moves depending on politics, the suitors begin arriving. Letters from other courts, sketches, coins sent as tokens, promises disguised as compliments. You are 13, or maybe 14. You are ripe, they say, as if you are fruit, as if you should be plucked before you fall. Marriage is not a question. It is an appointment. You will be married to someone older, to someone you've never met, to someone who speaks a different language, to someone who doesn't care what books you read, what songs you like, or what dreams you held in the brief years you were allowed to have them. You will leave your family, and in doing so, you will serve them. You will carry your family's banner into another man's hall. You will make sons for his name, but raise them with your blood. You are told this is your greatest duty, not just to marry, but to bear pain, to bear children, to bear silence. You are told women are stronger than they appear, because they must be, because childbirth kills more princesses than poison. You have seen it. You've heard the screams behind heavy doors. You've watched priests rush into chambers, not with medicines, but with relics and oil. Sometimes the baby lives. Sometimes the mother doesn't. Once your cousin gave birth to twins. She died 2 days later. The infants were baptized with water from the basin they used to wash her corpse. They still tell the story at court, but now it ends in a joke. Women die, but they do it quietly. If you are lucky, if you live, You'll raise your children. Your daughters will be taught to repeat your life. Your sons will be taught to rule, and you'll walk beside them like a statue in your own home, revered, respected, and utterly alone. Even your letters home will be read by other hands first. You miss your nurse, the one who used to braid your hair and tell you stories that ended in survival. She was dismissed when you turned 12. She saw too much. She said you were more than your womb. That was dangerous talk. You don't speak to your mother about these things. You don't speak to anyone, except your reflection. Even then, only in whispers. You are a daughter, a vessel, a pledge in silk, and you are expected to be proud of this. But sometimes, just sometimes, you imagine something else. Not freedom. That's a luxury you've never believed in. Just stillness. A moment without being watched. A breath without expectation. A family that loves you not because they have to, but because they want to. And in the rare silence of your chamber, when the candle burns low and the night is not yet heavy, you hold your pillow close and pretend it is a child. Not because you want one, but because you want to know what it feels like. To be the mother who stays. To be the one who holds, not the one who is handed over. You are a princess. You are a daughter. And one day, you will be a mother. But right now, you are just a girl. And no one remembers that part. Politeness, punishment, and power games. A princess in the political pit. Afternoons are for appearances, not naps, not leisure. You don't curl up with a book or watch birds from a window. You don't stretch your legs in the garden, barefoot and sun-drunk. That would be unseemly, childish, free. Instead, you perform. You might be invited to walk the inner courtyard with your mother and her ladies, not for pleasure, but for visibility. The queen must be seen, and so must her daughters. A royal procession, cloaked in velvet and frost, trailing perfumes and unreadable expressions. You do not lead. You walk 2 paces behind. The air is thick with unsaid things, rivalries, negotiations, secrets stitched into every hem. Each smile carries a warning. Every curtsy has weight. Someone is always watching. Sometimes it's the steward. Sometimes a visiting noble. Sometimes a priest pretending not to listen from behind a pillar. Even the statues have eyes here. You know better than to speak freely. The wrong word can twist itself into a rumor, then bloom into a scandal overnight. Last spring, your cousin whispered that she hated the embroidery she was forced to wear. The next morning, there was a note on her pillow. Ugly thoughts lead to uglier futures. No one signed it. Everyone knew who sent it. That's the game. The castle is full of small wars, not the kind with swords and banners. These wars are quieter, sharper, fought with glances, gestures, and gossip sharpened like needles. You've seen a maid dismissed for speaking out of turn. You've seen a lady in waiting suddenly married off to a man twice her age, just days after a nobleman's wife accused her of laughing too much at court. You don't laugh anymore. Not in public. Sometimes the afternoon brings visitors, envoys, local lords, priests with scrolls and vague smiles. You're expected to appear, to listen, to look serene. You sit beside your mother in the great chamber, hands folded, eyes soft, while men with long noses talk about grain taxes and border disputes and the Queen's household, as if you aren't sitting right there. If you speak, you must speak carefully, just the right amount of intelligence, enough to seem useful, never enough to seem dangerous. You are not to argue. You are not to challenge. You are not to reveal your own thoughts. Those are private. And privacy is a currency in this place. Spend it poorly, and you'll be poor forever. And then there are the punishments. Not for you, not usually, but they happen. Daily. Quietly. You hear them in the halls. A servant beaten for breaking a goblet. A scullery girl locked in a storeroom overnight for stealing a dried fig. A boy whipped for touching the falconer's tools. Their cries echo through stone, muffled, dismissed. You were told once by a tutor that punishment maintains order. That fear is the glue of civilization. You were 9. You didn't ask questions. But now, older, you understand the rules better. Punishments are rarely about the crime. They're about memory. Everyone sees. Everyone remembers. And they remember not to cross the wrong person twice. You saw a kitchen maid kneel in a hallway for 3 hours once, hands on her head, for entering the Queen's chamber without permission. Her knees bled. She didn't cry. That would have made it worse. You asked your governess why the punishment was so cruel. She said, "Better her than you," and walked away. Sometimes you wonder what would happen if you screamed, if you tore the veil from your head and ran barefoot down the corridor, yelling your name and refusing to kneel again. Would they punish you? Of course not. They'd send you away, to a convent, to a husband twice your age, to a corner of the kingdom where no one would ask questions. Because a disobedient princess is a liability, and liabilities are quietly erased. The afternoon is also when letters arrive. Most are not for you, but you read them anyway. Your mother lets you see the ones from foreign courts, the ones with vague proposals wrapped in flattering language. You're being considered, not for who you are, for what you represent. Your blood, your alliances, your womb. Sometimes the letters are blunt. Is the princess in good health? Does she speak Latin fluently? Has she bled yet? Yes, they mean that kind of bleeding. You feel sick when you read it. Not because it's crude, because it's expected. Your body is being discussed in rooms you'll never enter, by men you'll never meet, and their opinions will determine the rest of your life. Then come the politics of the women, the ones who smile at you sweetly, kiss your cheek, praise your embroidery, and then whisper about your posture, your weight, your eyes. They don't hate you. They simply need you to fail, just a little, so their own daughters shine brighter. It's not personal. It's strategy. Everything is strategy. You learn to read people's hands instead of their mouths. Who fidgets, who clenches, who hides a dagger in the rhythm of their rings. You watch how your mother says nothing when insulted, how she smiles like a queen and cuts like a blade without ever lifting her voice. You are learning. Your father's court is a place of polished cruelty. The wine is spiced, the carpets thick, the punishments invisible until they are final. You are safe, for now, because you are useful. But the second that changes, you know the smiles will shift. They will tell you it's for your own good. That marriage will be an honor. That silence is sacred. That exile is peace. And you will smile, because you are a princess. And rebellion is not allowed in the daylight. Only later, alone, can you unclench your jaw. Only when the doors close can you weep into your sleeves. Only then can you remember what your nurse once whispered before she left. Even the stillest water remembers how to flood. And you repeat that line to yourself as the candle burns low, as the bells call you to another supper, as your name becomes heavier than your dress. You are a medieval princess, and the afternoon isn't restful. It's warfare, with no blood, no battlefield, just walls, rules, and a silence sharp enough to cut bone. Darkness, danger, and dread. When night falls on a princess's world, night doesn't arrive softly in the castle. It doesn't tiptoe or whisper. It drops, like a curtain torn from the sky, thick and final. One moment the hallways are gold lit and echoing with the last scraps of courtly laughter, and the next, it is all shadows and hush. Servants light torches, guards begin their rounds, chambers are sealed, and every creak becomes suspicious. Even in a fortress of stone, the dark has power. As a princess, you're protected, at least in theory. There are guards outside your door. There are locks on the shutters. There are prayers stitched into your evening routines. But fear doesn't care about privilege, not when you're alone. Your chamber, grand by all accounts, becomes something else after sunset. The corners seem to widen. The bed seems colder. The silence grows teeth. And there's that sound again. The wind howling through the slits in the window. Or is it the wind? Sometimes it sounds like voices, like the ones you heard the day your cousin died, like the ones the priest says don't exist, but the servants refuse to speak about after dusk. You've been told not to believe in ghosts, but belief has nothing to do with it. Because the cold that crawls across your spine isn't imagined, and the candle that gutters out for no reason, that's not belief. That's experience. The castle is full of threats, but they change at night. By day, it's politics, posture, power games. By night, it's fire, and footsteps, and the lock on your door that doesn't quite catch. Fires were the great enemy of medieval castles. One stray ember from a hearth, and your tapestries, your rugs, your gowns, your very bed could become a pyre. You've heard stories of towers that burned so fast, the bells melted before they could be rung, of noble ladies leaping from windows, veils ablaze, screaming prayers into the black sky. You sleep with water nearby. You pretend it's for drinking. It's not. Then there are the men. Not all of them. But enough. Enough that every girl in the castle learns to sleep with the bolt drawn tight. Enough that maids whisper about avoiding the west wing after wine. Enough that you learned, at 12 years old, how to wake silently, how to slip a candle back into its holder with shaking hands, how to press your back to the wall if you heard boots outside your door after midnight. You're not allowed to accuse. You're not even allowed to hint. So instead, you learn silence and locks. And the difference between someone knocking politely and someone testing the door. Sleep is not restful. You lie beneath your heavy furs and thin sheets, listening. Sometimes it's the mice in the rafters. Sometimes it's your own heartbeat. Sometimes it's the sound of your lady-in-waiting breathing in the corner, curled on a rush mat. You envy her. She sleeps deeply. You never do. You dream, but they are not dreams of meadows or nights. You dream of blood. Not yours. Not yet. Other people's. The bleeding women from childbirth. The coughing maids. The hawker boy who died last winter with his eyes open and his hands turned blue. You dream of being buried alive, of walking into your marriage chamber and seeing a grave where a bed should be, of being forgotten, not publicly, but slowly, like a candle snuffed without even a puff of smoke. Sometimes you wake with tears on your face, sometimes with your jaw clenched so tight it aches through morning prayers, and no one notices. There are worse stories. You've heard them. A girl in a nearby court who vanished one night. They said she was taken by spirits. They said she ran away with a stable boy. They said she was mad and wandered into the woods. The truth, no one ever says it out loud. But you saw the look on your mother's face when the letter arrived. She knew. Whatever happened, it wasn't about spirits. It was about silence. And what happens when a girl is no longer useful? Or worse, when she becomes dangerous? That's the other fear. Not of death, but of what comes before it. Exile. Confinement. Marriage to a man who calls you girl until the day you die in childbirth. And yes, death is always waiting, but it never comes with dignity. Not for women. Not for princesses. The priest says that nighttime is holy, that it is when angels watch closest. You wonder if the angels ever blink. You pray. You always pray. You kneel beside your bed. The stone floor bites your knees. You whisper the Latin you were forced to memorize. You ask for protection, for silence, for something that feels like peace. You never pray for escape. That would be treason, even in your thoughts. You blow out the candle, lie down, and wait. Wait for the wind to quiet. Wait for the weight of your name to lift from your chest. Wait for the fear to fade just enough for your eyes to close. You are a medieval princess, and the night does not love you. It does not soothe you. It does not sing lullabies. It watches and waits and whispers. You are not safe. You never were, and you never will be. But you sleep anyway, because you have no choice. The candle burns. Lo, gratitude, reflection, and the weight of waking. It's quiet now. Not the cold kind of quiet you've known in the dark stone chambers of your castle. The quiet that feels sharp, hunted, filled with listening eyes. No. This quiet is different. It's soft, thick, like wool pulled gently over your thoughts, like fog settling on a field that no longer wants to be seen. You're still in your rooms, your grand, drafty, freezing, silken cage. But everything has slowed. The servants have gone. The candles have burned down to their last trembling inch. The fire in the brazier is mostly ash. The world outside your window, whether it's a courtyard, a cliffside, or just another tower, has disappeared into shadow. Even your name feels further away now. You are still a princess, but not like you were this morning, because today you remembered what that truly means. Not crowns and castles and dancing on marble floors, but obedience, endurance, a life of quiet sacrifice, wrapped in embroidery and expectation. Your body aches, even if it hasn't moved much. Your mind is tired, even though most of your day was spent in silence. And your heart, well, your heart has learned to beat beneath layers of linen, rules, and restraint. It's still there, just quiet, like you. You lie beneath your covers, such as they are. Straw mattress, wool blankets, a fur maybe, if the steward allowed it. You've learned to sleep with your hands crossed on your stomach. It looks ladylike even in dreams. You've learned not to turn too often. It makes the bed creak, and someone might come check on you. You've learned not to talk in your sleep, because in a castle, even your dreams are not private. And now you exhale, not a sigh. That would be too much. Just a soft breath, one that belongs to you and no one else. You've done everything they asked. You stood up straight. You bowed at the right time. You smiled when it was required, and not when it wasn't. You survived another day. And in your world, that is no small victory, because being a princess is not the fairy tale. It's the footnote in a treaty, the name in a ledger, the woman in the background of a painting, graceful, obedient, and barely remembered. But you were real, and real things hurt. You think sometimes about what might have been, if you'd been born a baker's daughter, or a shepherd's niece, or no one at all. Would you be happier? Maybe, but also colder, hungrier, lonelier in different ways. Because life in the medieval world was hard for everyone. No running water, no medicine that worked, no safety for anyone who was small or poor or wrong. But still, you wonder, what would it be like to run across a field with no shoes and no one calling you back? What would it be like to fall in love? Not for a title, but for the way someone said your name? What would it be like to have a name that was only yours? You never say these things aloud, but you carry them, like a secret, like a coin tucked beneath your tongue, shining in the dark. The candle is almost gone now. Its last little flame flickers. You watch it. And for once you don't think about duty, or war, or marriage. You think about the way the light dances. You think about how the dark outside your window isn't as frightening as the dark inside your heart. You think about sleep, because in sleep you are no longer a princess. You are a girl, a small, breathing girl in a world made of noise and rules and velvet walls. And for a few hours you are not watched. You are not weighed. You are not being measured for worth or marriage. You are just sleeping. And that is enough. So tonight, before you close your eyes completely, let's remember. Let's remember the stone beneath your feet, the herbs in the still room, the rushes on the floor, always just a little damp, the pages of scripture you pretended to understand, the pie you didn't want, the smile you had to hold. Let's remember the maid who never spoke, but always tucked the blanket in just right, the nurse who once kissed your forehead when she thought you were still dreaming, the sister who cried when she found out you'd be sent away, the cousin who died. Let's remember all of it, not because it was beautiful, but because it was real. And you survived it. Every cold morning, every breathless dinner, every silent punishment, every wedding planned without your voice. You survived it all, and now you're here, in a soft, quiet place, listening, remembering, breathing. You are not a princess anymore. You are not in a tower. You are not being watched. You are warm. You are safe. You are allowed to rest. So tonight, as you drift off, slowly, gently, be grateful. Grateful for warm water, for privacy, for toothpaste, for the freedom to speak or not, to eat when you're hungry, to love who you choose, to exist without being measured. Grateful to live in a world that, for all its flaws, does not ask you to sacrifice your soul for a crown. Sleep well now. You don't have to wake up in the Middle Ages, not ever.